Kam Redlawsk is a disabled industrial designer, artist, advocate, traveler, writer, and speaker. She is also a Korean-American adoptee. She has been an advocate for the rare disease and disability community for over 14 years, using art, writing, travels, and tools that connect us all.
It is so easy to get lost in your work, Kam, finding deep layers, dramatic edges, bold and beautiful. Your artwork is steeped in purpose, sharing stories and messages with meaning. When you begin each piece, does it usually start with a personal story that you want to share or a public statement that you want to make?
I'm not so much thinking of it as a public statement, but when I start, it is definitely coming from something that is going on in my life. It could be just general emotions, or it could be something specific that sparked it. But usually when I start a drawing, I very much visualize it in my head first, and then I'm trying to search for those lines and draw it out to kind of communicate. But I guess in turn, because I share it publicly, it is a public statement in a way. But it's meant to more be like, a lot of artists, they share their art and they don't share much more beyond that, but I want people to know what it's about. Even if when I share what something might specifically be about, which normally is about the emotions related to a progressive muscle wasting disease and my experience with that, people always inherently bring their own situation or their own experience or their own struggles or triumphs or things that they're experiencing into the narrative of my drawing, which I really love because that's what art is supposed to be. It is the intention of the artist, but at the same time, art is so wonderful because it can be transmitted and translated differently by so many people that will speak to them. So ultimately, I'm just sharing my emotions on paper and I visualize it in my head, and then it comes out and I share it.
Well, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So let's talk for a moment about being diagnosed with an extremely rare, progressive, and incurable at this time condition. You have endured losses, but found wins within them. If you would, please describe what you've lost and what you've gained with GNE myopathy.
With GNE, I've been living with it about 22 years now, and it's hard to say because there's just so much loss associated with it. And I've said before, it's not necessarily better or worse, but it's such a different experience than other people, like say spinal cord injury, where it's instant. There's some great things about it where I'm able to hold on into these physical attributes longer. But the other side of the mirror of it is that I'm continuously experiencing loss and a form of grief, because you're losing these things, like I used to drive and cooking. I loved cooking for people. And you just are forced to say goodbye to these things. And it can be really difficult in terms of dealing with loss. But I think with everything, there's always two sides, and there's also been a lot of gains. And I won't necessarily say which one is better, but it's greatly contributed to who I am. The core of me is the same, but I've just been given so much more perspective and different lenses. And also, a lot of people just kind of do the one thing that they like, and then they just stick with that. With me, I'm kind of forced and pushed to explore other things to match the current form that I'm in terms of what I can do and what I can't do. And that's how illustrations started. I started blogging about it. I was an advocate more in terms of the disease level and organization level. And then I realized, well, people don't respond to disease names or a nonprofit name. They respond to the story. And that's when I started drawing. And that's something I'm kind of losing now, which is kind of sad. As an artist, I don't want to lose the ability to draw. But I've also learned that there's other ways to create. You don't have to just draw. We're creative in so many ways. And I started writing. And I know when I can't draw one day, I'll still be able to be creative. And I think that's what's really important. What I've learned from this is there's always something new around the corner that we can push ourselves to do that will greatly enhance who we are as a person.
Wow, that's amazing. Your story, Kam, it's so interesting, and so many parts and pieces to it. Born in Korea, adopted and raised in Detroit. Now you live in LA. Two questions here. If home was a place, where would that be? And if home was a person, who would that be?
If home was a place, I would say I'm more of a wanderer. I've never really had one place. I think every experience or location or person that we're with contributes to, you know, the general tapestry of our life. For me, I would say home is not really a place, it's exploration for me. That's when I feel the most alive, and my disability doesn't affect any of that. Because to explore is to, like, you have endless wonder from the confines of your mind and looking at the world and seeing new things. If home was a person, I could say my husband, but I think a lot of people look externally. You know, I say my husband just because he's such an intricate part of my daily life, but I also think a lot of people would look externally for home or fulfillment or whatever it is. And I think it really has to start with you. I mean, you are, in essence, the home of your life, and you know yourself more than anyone else does. And I think it's really important. And that's another attribute that's come from being a little bit more less mobile, is you think more, and I'm forced to confront more of who I am than the average person. And in knowing yourself more, I think you're able to kind of interact with the world better. So I would say home should kind of be yourself, in essence, because you should really understand and have pride in who you are, and see the aspects of yourself that other people don't get to see. Push that forward rather than what everyone else says about you.
I love that. And I love it because so often you'll hear people say, oh, you have a beautiful home. But in your case, you know, you are a beautiful home. And yeah, wow. You know, so let's talk about the travel then. So it seems that your wanderlust has not been restricted whatsoever by your wheelchair. You've gone and seen more of the world than many people do in their lifetime, just from the photos that I've seen posted. What is it about travel that you love most? And the next part of that is, of all the places you've gone to, where would you like to go back to?
What I love most about travel is it forces you to think about someone else's life and see their life. Usually when we look at imagery or whatever of a culture across the world, we think it's so distant from us. But when you go, you realize, oh, they have the same daily activities as you do. They're the exact same person, except for they are privy to different experiences or privileges or perspectives that maybe I haven't been from my location in the United States. So I really like being forced to see what other people see. That's a form of exploration. And it just makes me, I like being mobile, which is interesting for someone who's immobile. So in a recent post I shared where I've never been asked, or I've never waited to be invited to be for access for someplace. I've been doing road trips for years, and me and my husband, we just go. I tell him, I want to go see this, and we'll go and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how can we make this work. Or then also, it's also, when that times it didn't work, adds to my repertoire of understanding why access is so important. And so exploration for me is the biggest thing, why I love traveling so much, being able to see different things, being able to hear the stories behind, weird art installations I'll find in the middle of the desert. Like, I really love stories. And I think that's what's the key to people and humanity, is our stories. And then the second question, what was that? Sorry, what was the second?
No, of all the places you've been to, where would you want to go back to?
I definitely want to go back to Korea and Japan. I'm from Korea, so I've been there twice, and I just connect more with the Asian cultures. I love Europe, and I want to do more South America, but I think our next on the list is going back to Korea and Japan, and Thailand. I really love Thailand. We were only there for a few days at a stopover, about 4 days. So I would say generally it's in Asia that I love. Yeah.
Nice. So nature, let's talk about nature for a moment. Nature has a way to nurture so many of us in so many ways. So please describe your connection with nature and the impact it has on you, both personally and professionally in your art.
Well, I'm a designer and artist, so nature, I think above all, is like one of the greatest designers of all. It's so, I'm not saying random and that it's random, but everything is bouncing off of a previous thing. Everything has to adapt to one another, whether it's plants, vegetation, or animals, and they all have to coincide. So what I love about nature and my discovery of it was basically when I came to California, and I had discovered Joshua Tree. And I recently talked about this. It's going to be launched actually Monday. That's a little documentary feature film where this nature photographer is doing a feature on a dozen or so people of their connection to nature. And in it I described, like when I saw the desert for the first time, it felt so connected to it because it resembled a lot of how I felt through a lot of my life, whether it was when I was an adoptee and going through being different in a different cultural society where it was all white, or whether it was when I was a teenage, early 20s going through the diagnosis stages of my disease. And then just in general, the progression of my disease and feeling just a little bit like different or isolated sometimes. So that became my, road trips through nature. And nature just is like quiet. It like allows you to like think and really look at what you're looking at. Oftentimes we're consumed and distracted. We're online. There's a million things we have to do when we're at home. Nature, you don't have to do any of that. I'm just going and I'm going to go roll and look at some freaking beautiful nature and just have like quiet conversations with yourself. And I think it's where a lot of my thoughts come to fruition is when I'm in nature or on a road trip.
Nice. So switching gears again, if I were to assume your favorite color, I would guess it is red. However, guesses and assumptions aside, what is your favorite shade and what is it about that hue that resonates with you?
So since I've been a kid, I've always liked black and white just because it's so graphic, they're polar opposites. And it's strange because when I was younger, I dressed to blend in. So I would dress in very neutral clothes. I didn't like sticking out. I still don't. It just happens to be, I am because I've decided to become went with being an advocate, and I thought the message was important enough to share. But in my real sense, I prefer not to stick out. So it's weird for me to have red hair. And it just happened one day. I was like everybody else who thinks, I can't carry out colored hair. I said that, I'm not cool enough to do that. And then you realize, oh, you are whatever you do. So no one ever comes and like, oh, you got red hair. That's crazy. That doesn't match you. Everyone's like, it ends up being a conversation point where people feel comfortable enough to come up to me because they want to compliment me on my hair. And they'll say things like that, like, oh, I could never dye my hair. And I was like, yes, you can, because I thought the same thing. We can do whatever we want to do. So red is definitely or a cherry bomb, or like a reddish pink is definitely like a constant color that comes up in my art now. So I kind of embraced it. I never used to be for red or pink because I thought it was like too girly and I was more of a tomboy. But now I really like the sharp contrast juxtaposed against like black and white and art and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you that for the past 3 months, I have had a box of red hair dye that I'm just like, I don't know if I can do it. But then I'm like looking, I came across you. I'm like looking, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I'm working up the courage. You're inspiring me. But what's so powerful, you just said there though, that you are what you do. As simple as that statement is, that's it, You
don't need to match it or think, well, people aren't going to think I'm edgy enough. All they're going to see is you with red hair and they're going, oh, that girl is edgy or that guy is edgy. And you should totally, red would look awesome on you.
Oh, thank you.
Red strip and the bangs, that'd be really fun.
I'm going to try. I'll blend it with my background. I'll have to change my painting. So, as a talented artist, writer, speaker, you've inspired so many with your work. To those who feel lost within their disability, seeking to find hope for their future, what is one piece of advice that you would share?
I would say reevaluate what rules you're trying to abide by. So I recently learned about ableism the last couple of years, and you don't realize it. And that's not blaming society. It's saying Society has been a victim of it, and disabled people have been a victim of it, where we've internalized the idea that there's something wrong with disabled people. Yes, I can't walk. Yes, I have trouble transferring to the bathroom. Yes, I need help with things, but there's so many other things I could do. So that makes sense. So many people, and this is completely normal, whether you know about ableism or not, when you have an injury or become disabled or something, of course you're going to go through the natural process of accepting this new life. But what also hinders us is we're also thinking it's the end of the world because we've been told it is the end of the world when you're disabled. And that's really important to have conversations with yourself and say, who am I judging myself against? What rules? And who created these rules? And that liberated me in so many ways. You know, I don't pretend to perfectly deal or accept with my disability. It's constantly changing. I have difficulties. I have difficult days. But the overall vista shot of yourself is that you're a person that is worth having access to life, being included in life. And yes, you may not always be asked, you just have to push yourself in there. And once more people see you, then they realize the importance of why things need to change. So I would say that would be the biggest thing, is just don't judge yourself based on what everybody else is they set up for you. So.
Yeah, no, that's, well, and to your point, you know, while there might be some things that you can't do, there's so much that you can do. Had a conversation recently, and it was about the term disabled, and perhaps we should change that up, right? Because words have weight to them, and as opposed to disabled, differently abled, right? Because that's more the truth of it. Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation that you just brought up. It's interesting. Disabled people, and I can't speak for every disabled person, I support any disabled person in terms of the term they want to be called. But in general, the mass field of advocates of disabled, they want to say, saying disabled is okay, because there's nothing wrong with the word disability. Words like differently abled, special needs, those have mostly been created by non-disabled people. And I totally get, like, a lot of disabled people like the word differently abled. And I put that in one of my posts, and I said, you know, these days people want to be, I don't mind becoming disabled at all, because I am disabled. Because I mean, the nuance of the conversation is sharing with the general society that being disabled doesn't mean I can't do anything now. So, but like I said, so, you know, some people like to reappropriate the word crippled. I personally don't like the word crippled, but there are some disabled. So again, I don't speak for all disabled. I like to, but in general, en masse, people are trying to normalize the word disabled. Disabled people are trying to normalize it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're in such an interesting time where all this is really coming to the surface, and people are talking, which is great. I mean, we need to find a way to speak and be comfortable, you know, talking about this, about us, and appreciate your perspective for sure. Appreciate so much of this. Appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation and helping all of us become a bit more aware now. So yeah. Thank you.
For inviting me.
Thank you so much.